A poor mechanic repairs an alien girl's bike at no cost. His life is about to transform forever. Rick Harlow wipes sweat from his brow, leaving another streak of grime across his weathered face. The twin alien suns beat down mercilessly on his back as he trudged along the empty morning streets of Neovalis, a sprawling metropolis on the planet Terralian. His 6 months stranded on this godforsaken rock had worn him down to the bone. Every day he passed the shuttered remains of his once thriving repair shop, Human Touch Mechanics. The sign hung crooked now, a painful reminder of better days before the economic sanctions against Earth citizens. The locals called it necessary precautions. Rick called it what it was, blatant discrimination. His muscular frame, once a point of pride, now served only to help him carry heavier loads at the spaceport docks where he found occasional work. His chestnut hair had grown shaggy, his stubble more pronounced. The only possessions he had left were his worn gray shirt, oil-stained work pants, and a pair of boots that had seen the better decades. As he rounded the corner toward the labor pickup zone, something caught his eye. A small figure stood beside a sleek, hovering bicycle, or what would have been hovering if it wasn't listing badly to one side, its propulsion unit sputtering pathetically. The little alien girl couldn't have been more than the equivalent of 8 Earth years. Her delicate green skin glistened with a light sheen of moisture, a sign of distress in Terralians. Large, almond-shaped eyes blinked rapidly as she stared helplessly at her malfunctioning bike. Her silvery white hair was pulled into intricate braids, and her lightweight white dress marked her as coming from one of the wealthy districts. Rick hesitated. Helping aliens these days could lead to trouble, especially one who was clearly from an upper-class family. But something in her frightened expression tugged at him. "Hey there," he called softly, approaching slowly with his palms visible. "Bike trouble?" The girl startled, taking a step back. Her eyes widened further, pupils dilating to almost twice their normal size. The Terralian equivalent of fear. "It's okay," Rick said, crouching down to appear less intimidating. "I'm a mechanic, or was anyway." He gestured toward the bike. "Mind if I take a look?" The girl remained silent, clutching the handlebars of her bike protectively. Rick noticed the sophisticated design, a Jet Cycle 3000, top of the line with custom modifications. "I'm Rick," he offered, pointing to himself. "What's your name?" Still no response. Cultural barriers were tough enough with adults, but children were even more challenging. He decided to try a different approach. "Look, I'm just going to check what's wrong, okay? No charge." He mimed examining the bike, then made a 0 with his fingers. "Free." The girl tilted her head, curiosity seemingly overcoming her fear. She took a small step back, allowing Rick access to the bike. He knelt beside the jet cycle, immediately spotting the issue. The primary flux capacitor had come loose from its housing, causing a cascade failure in the anti-gravity system. A simple fix for someone with the right tools, but those were locked away in his former shop. "I can fix this," he muttered, more to himself than to her, "but I'll need some tools." The girl watched him intently as he assessed the damage. Her posture had relaxed slightly, though she maintained a cautious distance. Rick glanced around, spotting a public maintenance panel nearby. With a bit of ingenuity, he might be able to jury-rig something useful. "Wait here," he told the girl, making a staying motion with his hand. "I'll be right back." The maintenance panel yielded a basic multi-tool, not ideal, but workable. Returning to the bike, Rick set to work, his hands moving with practiced precision despite the inadequate tools. The girl edged closer, fascination evident in her wide eyes. "See this?" Rick explained, pointing to the loose component. "This little thing controls how your bike floats. It got knocked out of place." He demonstrated the problem, then began the delicate process of realigning the capacitor. For over 2 hours, Rick worked under the increasingly hot suns, sweat soaking through his already dirty shirt. The repair was complicated by the lack of proper equipment, but his years of experience compensated for the deficiency. The girl gradually moved closer, watching his every movement with rapt attention. As he worked, Rick found himself talking, explaining each step in simple terms. Whether she understood him or not didn't matter. The sound of a human voice seemed to soothe her fears. "Almost got it," he murmured, making a final adjustment. The bike's propulsion unit hummed to life, the vehicle rising to hover perfectly level above the ground. There we go! The girl's face lit up with what Rick recognized as the universal expression of delight. She reached out tentatively to touch the now functioning bike. Go ahead, Rick encouraged, stepping back. Give it a try. Just as the girl cautiously mounted her repaired jet cycle, a sleek black hover vehicle screeched to a halt nearby. The door slid open and out stepped a tall, imposing Terralian male, his green skin several shades darker than the girl's. His cold, stern features were set in an expression of barely contained fury as he surveyed the scene. Rick's heart sank. The expensive suit and authoritative bearing marked this alien as someone of significant influence. Exactly the kind of person who could make his already difficult existence on Terralian even worse. The girl, however, let out a sound like tinkling bells, Terralian laughter, and pointed excitedly at her floating bike, then at Rick. The tall alien's expression shifted from anger to confusion, then to something Rick couldn't quite identify. He approached slowly, his gaze moving between his daughter and the disheveled human. You fixed her bike? He asked in perfect English, his voice deep and resonant. Rick straightened up, wiping his hands on his pants. Yes, sir. Just a displaced flux capacitor. Nothing major. The alien father looked at his daughter, who nodded enthusiastically, then back at Rick. And you charged her... What? Nothing, Rick said firmly. It was a simple fix. The alien studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. What is your name, human? Rick Harlow, sir. I am Counselor Theron Voss, the alien said, extending a four-fingered hand. And it seems I owe you my gratitude. I insist you join us for dinner tonight, Counselor Voss said, his tone making it clear this wasn't merely a suggestion. It's the least I can do to thank you properly. Rick shifted uncomfortably. That's really not necessary, sir. I was just... Helping my daughter when no one else would, Voss interrupted, his secondary eyelids blinking in what Rick recognized as a sign of sincere emotion. In my experience, Mr. Harlow, humans often say things are not necessary when they most certainly are. The little girl, Neri, as her father had introduced her, tugged at Rick's pant leg, looking up with those enormous eyes. She pointed at herself, then at Rick, then made a motion like eating. See? Even Neri wants you to come, Voss said with what passed for a smile among Terralians. Our home is in the Emerald District. I'll send transport for you at sundown. He handed Rick a small metallic card. This will grant you access through the security checkpoints. Before Rick could protest further, Voss and his daughter were back in their hover vehicle, leaving him standing alone with the access card and a profound sense of bewilderment. The Emerald District was aptly named. Towering spires of verdant crystal-like structures that caught and refracted the dying light of the setting suns. Rick felt painfully out of place as the automated transport Voss had sent delivered him to the counselor's residence, a sprawling mansion nestled among carefully cultivated alien flora. He'd done his best to clean up, washing the grime from his face and hands in his tiny rented room and attempting to press his least stained shirt with the flat side of a cooking pan. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. A house servant, another Terralian with paler green skin, met him at the entrance and guided him through corridors adorned with what appeared to be ancient artifacts and contemporary art pieces. The servant led him to a spacious room with a view overlooking the city below, where Counselor Voss awaited. Mr. Harlow, welcome, Voss greeted him, gesturing toward a seating area. Please make yourself comfortable. Refreshments will arrive shortly. Rick nodded, taking a seat on a chair that seemed designed for a body structure different from his own. Thank you for the invitation, Counselor. Your home is impressive. A benefit of my position, Voss replied modestly. I serve as head of interplanetary relations for the Terralian High Council. That explained a lot. The Interplanetary Relations Department was responsible for the very sanctions that had crippled Rick's business. Before Rick could respond, Neri bounded into the room, now dressed in a more elaborate outfit of shimmering blue fabric. She immediately ran to Rick, showing him a small device that projected holographic images of various mechanical objects. She hasn't stopped talking about you, Voss explained. Quite remarkable, considering she rarely speaks to anyone outside our family. Rick smiled at the girl. Well, I'm honored. She's got a good eye for mechanics. Indeed, her mother was the same way, Voss said, a hint of sadness in his voice. We lost her 3 cycles ago. I'm sorry to hear that, Rick said sincerely. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another Terralian, taller than Neri but shorter than the counselor, with a lithe, graceful form. Her skin was a deeper, richer shade of green than either Voss or Neri, almost emerald in its intensity. Unlike the traditional robes worn by most Terralians, she was dressed in a form-fitting outfit that seemed inspired by human fashion, accentuating a figure that was surprisingly similar to a human woman's. Ah, here she is, Voss said. Mr. Harlow, may I present my elder daughter, Naya? Naya's eyes, a striking amber color unlike the typical Terralian blue, fixed on Rick with undisguised interest. So you're the human who helped my sister, she said in flawless English, her voice melodic with an exotic undertone that sent an unexpected shiver down Rick's spine. Just did what anyone would do, Rick replied, standing to greet her properly. No, she countered, moving closer than Terralian etiquette typically allowed for first meetings. Oh, they wouldn't. Believe me, I know my people. There was something in her direct gaze that caught Rick off guard. A boldness uncommon among Terralians, who were typically reserved with new acquaintances. She extended her hand in the human manner of greeting, another surprising breach of typical Terralian protocol. It's a pleasure to meet you, Rick Harlow, she said as he took her hand. Her skin was warmer than he expected, and softer, almost velvety to the touch. Likewise, Rick managed, suddenly aware of how rough his calloused hand must feel against hers. Naya spent several years studying on Earth, Voss explained, watching their interaction with an unreadable expression. She's quite the cultural enthusiast. Cambridge, Naya specified, still holding Rick's hand a moment longer than necessary before releasing it. I found humans fascinating. The way she said fascinating carried implications that made Rick's collar feel suddenly tight. He cleared his throat. Cambridge is impressive. I only made it through technical college myself. Yet you fixed a jet cycle 3000 with improvised tools, she countered. That requires more intelligence than most university graduates I've met. Dinner was announced, saving Rick from having to respond. As they moved to the dining area, he couldn't help noticing how Naya positioned herself to walk beside him, close enough that her arm occasionally brushed against his. The meal was an elaborate affair featuring dishes Rick couldn't begin to identify, though Voss had thoughtfully included some Earth-compatible options. Throughout dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than Rick had anticipated, with Voss asking thoughtful questions about Rick's background and experience. Your repair shop, Human Touch Mechanics, I believe it was called, had quite a reputation before the sanctions, Voss remarked. Several council members used your services, myself included, though we never met personally. Business was good, Rick acknowledged, until it wasn't. The sanctions were politically necessary at the time, Voss said carefully, but perhaps overly broad in their application. Some of us have been advocating for revisions. Throughout the conversation, Rick was acutely aware of Naya's gaze. She spoke less than her father, but watched Rick intently, studying his expressions and movements with evident fascination. When their eyes met, she didn't look away as a typical Terralian would, but instead held his gaze with a slight curve to her lips that resembled a human smile. As the evening progressed, Rick found himself relaxing despite the opulent surroundings. Neri had taken to showing him her collection of mechanical toys, while Voss discussed the finer points of interspecies politics. Naya, meanwhile, had moved progressively closer to Rick on the seating arrangement, her presence a distracting warmth at his side. I have a proposition for you, Mr. Harlow, Voss said finally, setting down his drinking vessel, one that might interest you considerably. I'm prepared to not only help you reclaim your workshop, Counselor Voss said, leaning forward in his seat, but also secure you exclusive contracts with several high-ranking government officials who have been lamenting the loss of your services. Rick stared at the counselor, certain he'd misheard. Sir, that's extremely generous, but why would you do this for me? 3 reasons, Voss replied, raising a long, four-fingered hand. First, you helped my daughter without expectation of reward, a rare quality in any species. Second, your reputation as a mechanic is unparalleled. even among our own technicians. And third, he glanced at Neri, who was still showing Rick her mechanical toys. My youngest daughter hasn't been this animated since her mother passed. Rick felt a lump form in his throat. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Naya interjected, her amber eyes gleaming, and I'll personally assist with your cultural integration. After all, business on Terralian requires understanding certain nuances. Something in her tone made Rick's pulse quicken. He looked from Voss to Naya, then back again. If you're serious, then yes. I'd be a fool to refuse. Excellent, Voss said, rising from his seat. I'll have my legal team begin the paperwork tomorrow. Your shop should be operational again within a week. A week? Rick couldn't hide his surprise. That's incredibly fast. The advantages of my position, Voss said with a dismissive wave. Now, if you will excuse me, I must put Neri to bed and attend to some council matters. Naya can see to any questions you might have about the arrangement. As Voss ushered a reluctant Neri from the room, Naya moved even closer to Rick on the seating arrangement, the warmth of her body radiating against his side. So, she said, her voice dropping to a more intimate register, shall we begin your first lesson in Terralian cultural integration? Rick's workshop had indeed been restored within the week, just as Voss had promised. The equipment was not only returned but upgraded, and a steady stream of high-profile clients had already begun booking appointments. His financial situation had transformed overnight from desperate to prosperous. But it was the daily cultural integration lessons with Naya that had truly transformed his life on Terralian. You're holding it wrong again, she chided playfully, adjusting his grip on the ceremonial drinking vessel in his apartment above the newly reopened shop. Like this. Fingers curved, not straight. Rick deliberately mispositioned his hand again. Like this? No, she laughed, moving closer to correct him. Her body pressed against his as she guided his fingers. You're doing this on purpose. Maybe, he admitted with a grin. Your teaching methods are very hands-on. Humans learn best through physical demonstration, she replied, not moving away. At least that's what my Earth studies suggested. Their lessons had started innocently enough. Proper Terralian greetings, dining etiquette, business protocols. But each day, Naya found reasons for more physical contact, standing closer, letting touches linger longer. Rick wasn't naive. He recognized flirtation across species. What surprised him was his own powerful response to her. Despite the obvious biological differences, he found Naya increasingly alluring, her graceful movements, her quick wit, the musical quality of her laughter. What else did your Earth studies teach you about humans? He asked, setting down the ceremonial vessel. Many fascinating things, she said, her amber eyes holding his gaze. Your species experiences emotions more intensely than most. You form attachments quickly, and you have interesting physiological responses to attraction. Is that right? Rick's voice had grown husky. She confirmed, trailing a finger along his forearm. Increased heart rate, dilated pupils, elevated body temperature, all easily observable. And are you observing me now, Professor Naya? Always, she admitted. You're a fascinating specimen, Rick Harlow. He caught her hand in his. Is that all I am? A specimen? Something flickered in her eyes. Vulnerability, perhaps? No, you're much more than that. The air between them seemed to electrify. Rick was acutely aware of how close they were standing, how easy it would be to close the remaining distance. On Earth, he said softly, when two people feel what I think we're feeling, there's usually less talking involved. Show me, she whispered. Rick hesitated only a moment before drawing her closer, one hand at the small of her back. Their lips met, and any concerns about biological compatibility vanished instantly. Her mouth was warmer than a human's, her taste exotic yet pleasant, like cinnamon and something he couldn't name. Naya responded with surprising intensity, her body molding against his as if she'd been waiting for this moment. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. That was... she began. Yeah, he agreed. Terralians don't kiss like that, she said, her fingers touching her lips in wonder. How do Terralians kiss? A mischievous smile spread across her face. Perhaps that should be tomorrow's lesson. But there was no waiting until tomorrow. The dam had broken, and years of cultural curiosity on her part met with months of isolation on his. Their next kiss was deeper, more urgent, hands exploring unfamiliar terrain with increasing boldness. They moved to his modest sleeping area, cultural differences forgotten in the universal language of desire. What followed was a discovery of unexpected compatibilities, of alien yet familiar pleasures, of connection that transcended species. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the dim light of Terralian's 3 moons filtering through the window, Naya traced patterns on Rick's chest. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "in Terralian culture, what we just shared would be considered a formal bond." Rick propped himself up on one elbow. "Are you saying we're married now?" She laughed, the sound like musical chimes. "Not exactly, but it's more significant than casual intimacy. My father would expect certain commitments." "Your father," Rick groaned, flopping back onto the bed. "What will he think about this?" "He sent me to help with your cultural integration, didn't he?" Naya said with a sly smile. "I'd say you're integrating quite well." "That's not funny," Rick said, though he couldn't help smiling. "Hey, he's my biggest client and patron. If he disapproves..." "Hey, he won't," she assured him, placing a finger over his lips. "Terralian fathers don't interfere in their adult children's bond choices. It's considered highly improper." Rick relaxed slightly. "That's something at least. Besides," she added, snuggling closer, "he respects you. That's rare for him, especially with humans." As Rick held her, watching the alien moonlight play across her emerald skin, he marveled at how drastically his life had changed in just over a week. From destitute mechanic to successful business owner, from lonely exile to whatever this was becoming. "What are you thinking?" Naya asked, sensing his contemplation. "That fixing a little girl's bike was the best decision I ever made," he replied honestly. She smiled against his chest. "For both of us." A month into Rick's new life, business was booming. Human Touch Mechanics had become the preferred repair shop for Neovalis' elite, with a waiting list that stretched weeks ahead. Rick had even hired 2 assistants, a nervous Terralian named Prell and a burly Araxian named Dunt, to help handle the workload. This morning, he was tackling a particularly complex repair job for Subminister Kreth, one of Counselor Voss's colleagues in the Interplanetary Relations Department. The minister's personal transport had a persistent navigation glitch that 3 Terralian mechanics had failed to resolve. "Hand me the phase spanner," Rick called to Prell, who scrambled to retrieve the tool. "Is it the guidance system?" Prell asked, peering over Rick's shoulder. "No, that's working fine. It's something deeper." Rick slid under the hovering vehicle, examining the rarely accessed maintenance panel beneath. "The problem is intermittent, which usually means..." He stopped mid-sentence, frowning at what he saw. Nestled among the standard components was a small device he didn't recognize. Sleek, black, with pulsing red lights. "Prell, have you ever seen anything like this before?" Rick asked, pointing to the device. The Terralian's eyes widened. "No, sir. That's definitely not standard equipment." Rick carefully disconnected the device, examining it from all angles. Its design was unlike anything he'd encountered in Terralian technology, more angular, with an almost predatory aesthetic. "I think we just found our navigation problem," Rick muttered. "Someone's installed a tracking device, and not a Terralian one." Prell's secondary eyelids fluttered rapidly, a sign of distress. "We should report this immediately." "Yeah," Rick agreed, pocketing the device. "But let's finish the repair first. I don't want to alarm the minister until we're sure." By midday, the transport was fixed and returned to Subminister Kreth, with no mention of the mysterious device. Rick had decided to examine it more thoroughly before raising alarms. After closing the shop, he spread the components across his workbench, carefully disassembling the tracker. Inside, he found technology that confirmed his suspicions. It wasn't just non-Terralian, it was Kryvax in origin. The Kryvax were a notoriously aggressive species from a neighboring system, currently under strict trade embargoes due to their expansionist policies. Any Kryvax technology in Terralian was highly illegal. "Shit," Rick muttered, running a hand through his hair. This was way beyond a simple repair issue. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He quickly covered the disassembled device with a cloth before answering. Naya stood in the doorway, looking even more stunning than usual in a form-fitting outfit of deep purple that complemented her emerald skin perfectly. "Surprise," she said with a smile that made his heart race. "I thought we could have dinner together before my father's reception tonight." Despite the concerning discovery, Rick couldn't help but smile back. The past month with Naya had been the happiest of his life. Their relationship had deepened beyond physical attraction into something he'd never expected to find so far from Earth. Genuine connection. "I love that," he said, pulling her into a kiss that quickly intensified. Her hands slid under his shirt, tracing the muscles of his back with appreciative fingers. "You smell like angel oil," she murmured against his lips. "I never thought I'd find that attractive." Rick laughed, lifting her easily and carrying her toward his bedroom. Cultural differences can be surprising. Later, as they lay contentedly in each other's arms, Rick debated whether to tell Naya about his discovery. As the daughter of a high-ranking council member, she might have insights he lacked, but it could also put her in danger. "You're thinking very loudly," she observed, propping herself up on one elbow. "What's troubling you?" Rick hesitated, then made his decision. "I found something today in Sub-Minister Kreth's transport." He explained about the tracking device, showing her the components he'd disassembled. Naya's expression grew increasingly grave. "Kryvak's technology on a council member's vehicle is concerning," she said, examining the parts with expert eyes. "Especially given the current negotiations." "What negotiations?" Naya bit her lip, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "It's classified, but the council is discussing new security measures against Kryvak's incursions. Sub-Minister Kreth is leading the initiative." Rick whistled low. "So someone's spying on him. That can't be good." "No, it's not." Naya gathered the components carefully. "We need to tell my father immediately." "Wait," Rick said, catching her hand. "We don't know how deep this goes. What if there are sympathizers within the council itself?" Naya's eyes widened at the implication. "You think someone in the government is working with the Kryvaks?" "I don't know," Rick admitted, "but I've seen enough political intrigue to know that rushing in without all the facts is dangerous." She nodded slowly. "What do you suggest?" "Let me do some digging first. See if I can trace where this came from. Then we go to your father with solid information?" Naya studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But be careful, Rick. The Kryvaks aren't known for their mercy." "I will," he promised, pulling her close again. "Now, didn't you mention something about your father's reception tonight?" She groaned, burying her face against his chest. "I'd almost forgotten. It's going to be terribly dull. All politics and posturing." "Well then," Rick said, his hands beginning to wander again, "we should make the most of our time before you have to leave." Naya's amber eyes darkened with renewed desire. "I do like how humans think." As they lost themselves in each other once more, Rick pushed aside his concerns about the tracking device. But in the back of his mind, he knew their peaceful new life was about to face its first serious challenge. Later, as Naya dressed for the reception, she paused at the door. "Rick, whatever you discover, be careful. The relationship between humans and Terralians is still fragile. If you're caught investigating a council member—" "I know," he said soberly. "I'll be discreet." After she left, Rick returned to the components spread across his workbench. Something about this didn't add up. Why target Kreth specifically? And how had the device been installed without detection by the minister's security team? The answers he suspected would lead him into dangerous territory, far beyond the simple life of a mechanic he'd reclaimed. But if there was a threat to Terralian, there was a threat to Naya and her family, and that made it his problem too. Rick carefully reassembled the tracking device. Tomorrow he would begin his investigation in earnest. Tonight he needed to prepare for whatever might come next. Rick spent the next 3 days modifying the tracking device, transforming it from a passive receiver into an active transmitter that would lead him to whoever was monitoring Sub-Minister Kreth. The work required his finest skills, delicate soldering, precise calibration, and intuitive problem-solving that few engineers of any species could match. "You've been distracted," Naya observed on the 4th evening, curling against him in bed. Their nights together had become a cherished routine, a sanctuary of connection amid growing concerns. "Just focused on the project," Rick replied, stroking her silky hair. He told her about his plan to track the trackers, but had kept the details vague for her protection. "Be careful tonight," she whispered, her amber eyes serious. "If anything happened to you..." He silenced her worry with a kiss that quickly deepened, their bodies responding with now familiar hunger. Their physical connection had evolved into something transcendent, a perfect harmony despite their different biologies. In these moments wrapped in each other's arms, the looming danger seemed distant and manageable. Later, as Naya slept, Rick carefully dressed in dark clothing and slipped the modified device into his pocket. He left a note on the pillow. "Back before sunrise, don't worry. The lower districts of Neovalis pulsed with a different energy than the pristine upper levels. Here, species from across the galaxy mingled in a chaotic blend of commerce, vice, and survival." Rick moved through the shadows following the steady ping of his tracker. The signal led him to an unmarked building in the industrial sector. Security was minimal, just a single board guard whom Rick easily avoided by climbing a maintenance ladder to the roof. A ventilation shaft provided access to the interior, where he followed the increasingly strong signal to a room filled with communication equipment. No one was present, but the active monitors told him this was the right place. He quickly connected a data chip to the main console, copying everything he could access. As the download progressed, he examined the equipment more closely, frowning at what he found. The technology was a bizarre hybrid, Krivax designs built with human components. Earth-manufactured circuit boards had been repurposed for alien specifications, creating something that would implicate humans while serving Krivax purposes. "Clever bastards," Rick muttered. Someone was deliberately creating evidence to frame humans for espionage. The download completed, and Rick pocketed the chip. He was about to leave when voices approached. With no time to reach the ventilation shaft, he ducked behind a server bank. Two figures entered, a Krivax male with the characteristic ridged skull and amber scales of his species, and a Terralesian Rick recognized with shock. Counselor Marin, one of Voss's colleagues on the Interplanetary Council. "The operation proceeds as planned," the Krivax was saying. "When the evidence points to human involvement, the Council will have no choice but to expel all Earth citizens and reinstate the trade embargoes," Marin added with satisfaction. "The humans have been stealing our contracts since Voss foolishly championed their cause. Once they're gone, our arrangement can proceed without interference." The Krivax agreed. "The weapons technology you've requested will be delivered through the established channels." Rick's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about spying. It was about illegal arms trading, disguised as a human conspiracy. If successful, it would destroy the fragile acceptance humans had gained on Terralan and potentially spark interspecies conflict. He needed to document this conversation, but as he reached for his comm unit, his elbow knocked against the server, producing a soft but distinct clang. Both aliens froze. "Check that," the Krivax ordered, and Marin moved toward Rick's hiding place. Rick tensed, preparing to fight, but the server room door burst open, revealing 4 armed Terralian security officers led by none other than Counselor Voss himself. "Counselor Marin," Voss said coldly, "you're under arrest for treason and conspiracy with an embargoed species." The Krivax reached for a weapon, but the security team was faster, stunning both conspirators before they could react. As the officers secured the prisoners, Voss's gaze found Rick behind the server bank. "Mr. Harlow, I should have known you'd be in the middle of this." Rick emerged from hiding, data chip in hand. "Counselor, I can explain." "No need," Voss interrupted, his expression softening slightly. "Naya told me everything after you left tonight. Your loyalty to Terralian is unexpected but appreciated." "It's not just Terralian I care about, Rick said pointedly. Voss nodded in understanding. "Indeed, though your methods are unorthodox, your intentions appear honorable." As the security team led the conspirators away, Rick explained what he discovered about the modified human technology. "A sophisticated frame," Voss agreed grimly. "Had you not intervened, it might have succeeded. The evidence against humans would have been compelling." "How did you know to come here tonight?" Rick asked. "We've been monitoring Marin for some time, suspecting corruption but lacking proof." When Naya explained your discovery, we accelerated our surveillance. Voss regarded Rick with newfound respect. Your mechanical intuition accomplished in days what our intelligence services couldn't in months. They exited the building to find Naya waiting anxiously outside the security perimeter. When she spotted Rick, she rushed forward, throwing her arms around him with uncharacteristic public emotion. You reckless, brilliant human, she murmured against his neck. I was terrified. I'm fine, he assured her, holding her tight. Your father arrived just in time. Voss approached them, his expression serious. This conspiracy goes deeper than Marin. We've identified at least 3 other officials involved in the weapons trading scheme. Will this affect the human population on Terralian? Rick asked, his arm still around Naya. Quite the opposite, Voss replied. When word spreads that a human mechanic uncovered a plot that our own security forces missed, it will significantly improve your specie's standing, particularly since the conspiracy specifically targeted humans for framing. Dawn was breaking as they left the industrial sector, the first of Terralian's suns painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Rick felt exhausted but relieved. The immediate danger had passed. As they reached Voss's official vehicle, the counselor turned to Rick. The council will convene an emergency session today to address this situation. Your presence will be required to testify. Rick nodded, though the thought of facing the full council was intimidating. Don't worry, Naya whispered, squeezing his hand. You'll be recognized as a hero. I'm no hero, Rick objected. Just a mechanic who noticed something wrong and tried to fix it. Voss made a sound that might have been a chuckle. Perhaps that's precisely what makes humans unique, Mr. Harlow. You see broken things, whether machines or situations, and your instinct is to repair them, often at personal risk. As they drove back toward the upper districts, Rick reflected on how drastically his life had changed since that morning he fixed a little girl's bike. From destitute exile to key figure in an interplanetary conspiracy, all because he couldn't walk past someone who needed help. Beside him, Naya rested her head on his shoulder, her presence a reminder of the most precious transformation of all. The grand chamber of the Terralian High Council glittered with polished stone and ancient symbols. Rick stood before the semicircular table where 13 council members sat in judgment, their expressions ranging from open curiosity to thinly veiled suspicion. Only Counselor Voss, seated at the center position, offered a reassuring nod. On Richard Harlow of Earth, intoned the chief counselor, an elderly Terralian with pale mint skin, you have been summoned to provide testimony regarding the conspiracy uncovered in the industrial sector. For the next hour, Rick detailed his discovery of the tracking device, his investigation, and the conversation he had overheard between Counselor Marin and the Krivax agent. The council members listened intently, occasionally interrupting with clarifying questions. And you undertook this investigation without official sanction? Asked one counselor, her tone disapproving. I did, Rick acknowledged. Where I come from, when you see something wrong, you try to fix it. Even at great personal risk? Another counselor inquired. Rick shrugged. Especially then. A murmur rippled through the chamber. From her seat in the public gallery, Naya caught his eye and smiled proudly. When the questioning concluded, the council deliberated briefly before the chief counselor addressed Rick again. Mr. Harlow, your actions, while unorthodox, have uncovered a plot that threatened not only Terralian security, but interplanetary peace. The council acknowledges your service and wishes to express its gratitude. Rick bowed his head respectfully. Thank you, but I was just being human, Voss interrupted with what passed for a smile among his species. A quality we are beginning to appreciate more fully. The chief counselor continued. In recognition of your unique abilities, this council offers you the newly created position of Chief Security Technician for the Department of Interplanetary Relations. Your expertise in identifying and countering technological threats would be invaluable. Rick blinked in surprise. From destitute mechanic to government official in less than 2 months, it was almost too much to process. I'm honored, he managed, but I'd need to maintain my workshop as well. It's where I do my best thinking. A reasonable accommodation, the chief counselor agreed. The position includes diplomatic status, which will exempt you from any future sanctions against Earth citizens. As the formal proceedings concluded, Voss approached Rick. There will be a recognition ceremony this evening. Your presence is requested, along with Naya's. Is that your subtle way of acknowledging our relationship, counselor? Rick asked with a raised eyebrow. Voss's secondary eyelids flickered in what Rick had learned was amusement. Nothing subtle about it, Mr. Harlow. I plan to make a public announcement of my support. The recognition ceremony was held in the Grand Plaza, with hundreds of Terralians in attendance. Rick, dressed in formal attire provided by Voss's staff, stood uncomfortably on the platform as the chief counselor recounted his actions for the crowd. Nia, resplendent in a gown that shimmered like liquid emeralds, squeezed his hand reassuringly. You're doing fine, she whispered. Just smile and try not to look like you're facing execution. Rick chuckled, relaxing slightly. Is it that obvious? Only to me, she replied, her amber eyes warm with affection. As Counselor Voss stepped forward to present Rick with the official medallion of diplomatic status, a commotion erupted at the edge of the plaza. Security officers moved quickly toward the disturbance, but not before a Terralian male broke through the crowd, brandishing what appeared to be a ceremonial blade. Death to human sympathizers, the assailant shouted, charging toward the platform. Rick reacted instinctively, pushing Naya behind him and stepping forward to meet the threat. The attacker lunged, but Rick, drawing on combat training from his military service years before becoming a mechanic, sidestepped the blade and caught the assailant's arm, using the Terralian's momentum to flip him onto his back. Security officers swarmed in, restraining the would-be assassin, who continued to spew anti-human rhetoric as he was dragged away. Krivak's sympathizer, Voss explained grimly as order was restored, a final desperate attempt to disrupt our progress. Rick nodded, his heart rate gradually returning to normal. Not very effective. On the contrary, Voss said, gesturing to the crowd, which had erupted into enthusiastic applause, I believe it was extremely effective, just not in the way intended. The Terralians were cheering. For him, Rick realized with astonishment, what had begun as a formal ceremony had transformed into a genuine celebration of human capability and courage. The remainder of the ceremony proceeded without incident, culminating in Voss's announcement of Rick's new position and, to Rick's surprise, a formal declaration of his support for Rick and Naya's relationship, a significant political statement from one of Terralian's most influential leaders. My daughter has chosen well, Voss proclaimed to the assembled crowd, and in doing so, has helped forge a stronger bond between our peoples. Later that night, in the privacy of Rick's apartment above his workshop, he and Naya celebrated in their own way, their bodies finding that perfect harmony that transcended their biological differences. In the aftermath, as they lay contentedly entwined, Naya traced the new medallion resting on Rick's chest. Chief Security Technician, she mused. Quite a promotion from fixing little girls' bikes. Rick caught her hand, kissing her fingertips. That bike changed everything, if Neri hadn't been stranded that morning. The universe works in mysterious ways, Naya agreed. Speaking of Neri, she's made you something. A gift for the ceremony, but she was too shy to present it publicly. She reached for her discarded gown, retrieving a small package wrapped in iridescent material. Inside was a crude but recognizable model of a jet cycle, crafted from spare parts and wire. She worked on it for days, Naya said softly. She says it's to remind you where it all began. Rick felt a lump form in his throat as he examined the little model. I'll keep it in my new office. About that, Naya said, a hint of mischief in her voice. I've been assigned as your cultural liaison. Apparently the council feels you still need guidance in Terralian customs. Rick pulled her closer, his hands beginning to wander. Is that so? And what customs will you be teaching me tonight, Professor? Oh, I think we've moved well beyond the basic curriculum, she murmured against his lips. This is definitely advanced study. 3 months ago, Rick had been a desperate man on an alien world, struggling just to survive. Now he had a respected position, a thriving business, and most importantly, a relationship that defied the odds of biology and culture. All because he'd stopped to help a little girl with a broken bike. As dawn broke over Neovalis, painting the room in soft purples and golds, Rick held Naya close and made a silent promise to himself. No matter how high he rose in Terralian society, he would never forget what had brought him here. The simple human instinct to fix what was broken, to help those in need, without expectation of reward. It was, he realized, the quality that Terralians found most fascinating about humans. Not our technology or our strength, but our fundamental drive to make things better. Whether it was a child's toy, a complex political conspiracy, or the relationship between two different species. Humanity, with all its flaws and virtues, had something unique to offer the galaxy, and Rick, through one small act of kindness, had become its unexpected ambassador. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Naya asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Rick smiled, kissing her forehead. "Just that fixing that bike was the best decision I ever made." "For both of us," she agreed, echoing words she'd spoken once before, but which now carried the weight of everything they'd experienced together. Outside, Neopolis was awakening to a new day, one where humans and Terralians would work together more closely than ever before, and it had all begun with a broken bike and a mechanic who couldn't walk away from someone in need. The sprawling complex of human-touch interplanetary solutions dominated the skyline of Neopolis's newly developed technology district. What had begun as a humble repair shop had evolved into the premier technological innovation center on Terralian, employing over 200 beings from 17 different species. Rick Harlow, now sporting few distinguished gray streaks in his chestnut hair, stood on the observation deck of the main building, watching as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the 5th annual Interspecies Technology Summit he had founded. "Admiring your empire?" came a familiar melodic voice behind him. Rick turned to find Naya, her emerald skin glowing with health and happiness. The simple gold band on her left hand, a human tradition she had enthusiastically embraced, caught the light of the setting suns. "Just thinking about how it all started," he replied, pulling her into his arms. "One little bike repair. And now look at you, Chief Security Advisor to the Interplanetary Council, successful business owner, and the face of human-Terralian relations." She kissed him softly. "Not bad for a mechanic." A small green blur suddenly raced onto the observation deck, followed by a taller, more dignified figure. "Uncle Rick!" Neri exclaimed, no longer the shy child he'd first met, but a confident young Terralian approaching adolescence. "Father says the Earth delegation has arrived. Can we go meet them now?" Councillor Voss, now High Chancellor of Terralian, approached at a more measured pace. My apologies for the interruption. She insisted on delivering the news personally." Rick laughed, ruffling Neri's silvery hair. "No apologies needed. Family's always welcome." The word family had taken on new meaning for Rick over the years. His marriage to Naya, the first officially recognized union between a human and Terralian, had been controversial initially, but was now celebrated as a symbol of successful interspecies relations. "The Earth ambassador is particularly eager to see your new propulsion system," Voss noted as they walked toward the landing platform. "I believe it may lead to a significant expansion of the trade agreement." Rick nodded, feeling a surge of pride. The system, developed by combining human intuitive engineering with Terralian precision technology, had revolutionized interstellar travel, making it faster and more efficient than ever before. As they reached the platform, the sleek Earth diplomatic vessel was just completing its landing sequence. The hatch opened to reveal Ambassador Chester and her delegation. Chief Advisor Harlow, she greeted him formally before breaking into a warm smile. "Or should I just call you the miracle worker of Neopolis? Your reputation on Earth has reached almost mythical proportions." "Just Rick is fine," he insisted, shaking her hand, "and the stories are greatly exaggerated." "I don't think they are," Chester replied, glancing around at the technological marvel he had built. "You've single-handedly improved humanity's standing throughout the sector." Later, as the formal reception for the Earth delegation got underway in the Grand Hall, Rick found a quiet moment with Naya on a balcony overlooking the city. "Ambassador Chester offered me a position back on Earth," he said, watching her reaction carefully. "Head of Interspecies Technology Development. It would mean relocating to Earth, at least part-time." Naya was silent for a moment, her amber eyes thoughtful. "What did you tell her?" "That I needed to discuss it with my wife," Rick replied, taking her hands in his. "This would be a big change for us." "Earth," Naya mused. looking up at the night sky where her husband's home planet was just a distant point of light. "I've always wanted to see more of it than just Cambridge." "You'd consider it?" Rick asked, surprised by her openness to the idea. "Of course," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You left your home for mine. Perhaps it's time I experienced yours." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Besides, I hear Earth women have some interesting customs I haven't tried yet." Rick laughed, pulling her close. "Always the cultural enthusiast." From inside came the sound of Neri calling for them. Something about Chancellor Voss preparing to make an announcement. "We should go back in," Naya said, though she made no move to leave Rick's embrace. "In a minute," he replied, savoring the moment. "I'm just thinking about how lucky I am that a little girl's bike broke down on exactly the right street corner." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Naya said softly. "Some things are simply meant to be." As they rejoined the celebration, Rick reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him here. From a destitute mechanic to a key figure in interplanetary relations, from a lonely exile to a man with a family he adored. All because he'd stopped to help a child in need, expecting nothing in return. It was, he realized, the most human thing he could have done. And in doing so, he not only transformed his own life, but had helped transform how an entire alien civilization viewed humanity. One small act of kindness rippling outward across the stars.